club. There are refreshments over here. There's a little bit of coffee left, some other things to kind of nibble on. Feel free to do that. You know, I don't remember when it occurred to me that we could do a poetry reading with these guys. I go to the Sunday morning salon meeting here at the 48th Street Club with all three of these people. And I've known them for varying lengths of time. And when I went to the board to say, you know, what about a poetry reading? I got a little bit of resistance. They said, poetry? What does that have to do with recovery? I said, well, what do football games have to do with recovery? It was the day before we were going to have an Easter egg hunt. I said, what do Easter egg hunts have to do with recovery? So they finally gave us their blessing, so here we are. Maybe we'll do it again.
So try to behave yourself.
Yeah. I've known Steve since the late 70s when he and I sobered up at the same time here on Sunday morning, pretty much in this very room. We went to meetings together for a long, long time. At some point, he started a little literary magazine called the Dismal River Review, which is now online. And at one point, he sort of graciously published a little piece of mine that was about collecting garbage. And Ernie said to me on the way out the door one day after a meeting, he commented on a line on that, in that poem. And that's kind of one of the first kind of concrete conversations I remember having with Ernie. Steve's been a writer all the time that I've known him. And so is Ernie. I find that although I know Ernie pretty well, if I try and really pay attention to his poetry and analyze it, I don't get very far. What I do is I kind of listen to it kind of like it's music. I just kind of am attentive to the way that I feel as I listen to it. And at some point, Rich, here by the pillar, started a monthly poetry kind of workshop that Ernie's been involved with. And part of that workshop experience somehow attracted Todd, who teaches at UNO, who reads all around town all the time.
What else am I going to do?
Yeah. And so as I kind of sat there in the downstairs meeting today, I thought, you know, there's a tremendous amount of talent in this room that seasoned, somewhat professional writers who know what they're doing. Wouldn't it be kind of nice to listen to them? So I was looking on line at the Dismal River blogspot today, and here's something that Steve put up there about a year ago, and I have his permission to read it. It's called Late as Usual to the Judgment.
Right on time.
No comment. Okay. Late as usual to the judgment. I offered up the usual excuse and apology. Sorry, I was busy. I was told that no apology was necessary and that here we sing and dance. And I could go ahead and get to it. That is, unless I wanted to be productive and do something with decent ROI. If that is the case, they said, I should fetch some ochre and charcoal and start in painting the walls of the cave. I'll leave them to it.
Thanks, Nancy.
Do we really want to read that disclaimer thing?
Yeah.
It's kind of goofy. I'm not,
Start with
Yeah, we're starting with
We're
that.
gonna roll with that.
I'm not too sure that it actually is pertinent to the situation. But
It's pertinent
I
to
think
every situation.
It's perfect. In fact, we should start every meeting with this.
Every morning.
Every morning.
Disclaimer, see, it has exclamation points, which I'm not too fond of, but the views expressed are not those of this station or its affiliates or the organizations, institutions, political parties, interest groups, or individuals providing funding, nor do they represent the opinions of the writers, producers, directors, commentators, innocent civilians depicted, or their animals. They do not represent the cultural norms of the general population or the beliefs of any anthropologist, economist, physicist, political scientist, philosopher, or spiritual leader. This presentation is the sole property of the proprietors and may not be reproduced in any way repeated or remembered. Violators are subject to fines and imprisonment. The products advertised may be defective and have been known to produce side effects in a small percentage of those who use them. These may include shortness of breath, dizziness, blurred vision, impotence, low birth weight, psychosis, osteoporosis, skin eruptions, shortened attention span, scurvy, gonorrhea, hearing loss, moral laxity, baldness, bad breath, visual impairment, clubfoot, depression, internal bleeding, death, and disaffection in the afterlife. The water may be contaminated and the air may be toxic. The management is not responsible for damage to vehicles, lost or stolen articles, and the floors may be slippery when wet. So there.
Can I get that on my gravestone? You going this way or that way?
Oh, you can go that way.
All right, this way. This way. I think this is this way, that is that way.
It's around the
All right, well, hello everyone, it's good to see you here. Thank you, Steve, Nancy, Ernst, and all my teachers out there in the crowd. Normally I really like to stand and boogie a little bit, but I love this seated king thing, the regal. Yeah, so I guess I'm going to be sitting today, and I'm used to that. So thank y'all for coming out on this beautiful day. It's already worth your time and money, in my opinion. And that is a brutal act to follow, but I guess that's my destiny. I'll jump right in. And hello to the camera. I either have poems about recovery, failed recovery, or about Star Trek. So that's not generally, but just today. Well, generally. This is cunning, baffling, powerful. The girl on the addiction show has hair like a baby bird's, and everyone can see her underwear when she falls down all over the place in her wrinkled skirts. The sidewalk pitches like the deck of a ship on a Monday night in Missoula, and the camera crew is surely complicit in my schadenfreude 1,000 miles south of Ground Zero, easy chair popped back, a handful of popcorn uneaten for once in my palm. She's a real jewel-eyed weirdo, sort of smart under all that mascara and Molly, goofy in the right ways, artsy, fartsy, easy, giggly, just like Angie, my crazy cousin from Kearney, the one who sells trees to pizza delivery boys and only does the hard stuff on New Year's and Saturdays. So I'm sitting here 16 months past my last dose, mouth dusted with salt, my lady petting her eye slab on the couch, wondering what's right in a world where camera crews tag along for some child's wild ride, while I want to wrap her in a towel and drop her off at the orphanage. At the intervention in the shitty hotel meeting room, everyone is crying, and I think, you poor little bird, you have broken a lot of fucking hearts. And I'm crying just a little too, and remembering bowls and pills and bottles I poured into my own emptiness. So when she agrees to go to rehab and gets on the plane to tender music and jets over clouds piled up like marshmallows and mushrooms, I have a surge of hope and no longer want to break another day's boring light into rainbows with mirrors and smoke. But as I sit in my self-satisfied afterglow, I know that the dark on the television, at the windows, in my brain, and everywhere will always whisper, "Come out and play." Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Ernst. Thanks, Ernie. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to start with one that Ernie published 30 years ago. Ernie was the poetry editor of a weekly called The Metropolitan. And I sent him this poem that I wrote in Tokyo in 1984. And in 1985, Ernie published it in The Metropolitan and sent me a check for $25, which is the most I've ever been paid for a poem. So thank you, Ernie. A Taste of English. It's called A Taste of English, Tokyo, winter, 1984. Scrawled in red crayon on the cover of her book, Oh my God, upon my word, I will study English. She needs no book. Tokyo eats English. Spago, Hard Rock Cafe, Tony Roma's Hamburger Inn, American owned and operated. Rapongi's music alone could turn the trick, nourish a new tongue. All those soft-bellied American songs are heard here. What's a sweetheart like you doing in a dump like this? They reach down, teach pain's intricate grasp, the taste of flight. The need is not for words, but there's her shirt. Samba Island Beach Quest Company. African curls, Asian eyes. She drags twice on the mild 7, stubs it out, black shirt, Dodgers jacket. My tongue's been in 7 cups and is sour with smoke, but it is an English tongue from tip down to where it's rooted in the vicinity of the belly. Cross words with me. Sometimes we call this the gut, especially when it is round and full back in soft America. Here's some English. Upon my word, my brooding word, my God, yes, my native tongue is cannibalized in the wind through her teeth and the word it feeds.
I don't know why this is in Spanish, but Alrededor de Zul Vecindario, or, around the blue neighborhood, basically. Horizontal sunlight, late October, and as I consider the arid weather's drafty peculiarities, a couple of gypsies wander down the alley carrying sheets of drywall from the dumpster. Their small bulldogs tag along behind, dressed in children's pastel coats, pink and blue, disturbing little Oliver, the rat-like mutt who lives next door. The berry vine is bloomed, white filigree above the faded trellis against the sky's blue shelter. The ghetto palm has begun to turn, a few poplar leaves have fallen. Brown grass slumbers around the neighborhood, no word from the willow tree. Morning after chill blue innocuous morning, starlings congregate like gatherings of wind and suddenly are gone.
All right. I should have started with this one because it's set in this building. Why didn't I start with this one, Ernie? You can fix that on the interweb, so I start with this one. Hey, do your magic, or do your magic. I never know who to address, man. All right, this is pretty weird. I don't think there's anything else to say. It's all fucked up. So, a friend of Bill's mourns for the pink cloud. At the house of no hangovers, the bartender pours only coffee. Serenades me with the Isley Brothers every Sunday morning. Air bass held high and funky, cooling me out for the sake of love. So many stories and thought lines in these rooms. The plate of Christmas morning cocaine conjured again and again for the sake of sobriety. Or that art show benefit where 2 gals got in a bidding war over a macaroni and cheese box swastika. One was married to me, drunk on Veuve Clicquot while a vape idled in my tuxedo pocket. Now we've got some forgetting to do. Over another saltless dinner, I think of vegetarian Hitler and his flavorless meals. He loved dogs and mountain air like everybody. Rush Limbaugh, brain of an Abu Ghraib warden, face of my Uncle Bill. His glass of scotch is always empty. When I was a child, I read comic books featuring super dogs in red capes, their houses sturdy on asteroids, waiting for a whistle only they could hear. Manhattans were like that for me, the crash of amber on ice turning my bones to jelly. I sometimes feel life is a Tijuana Bible, each page a four-color kaleidoscope of human folly. B bought 200 Oxycontin from his neighbor, the widow. C taught her little sister how to huff. T remodeled his heart, scar tissue filling those lonely chambers. Next year will be summery as a clothesline full of winding sheets. One speaker tells us she cannot bring herself to admit she's a drunk. Another wants a face full of gunpowder. My sponsor is so tender with cheer and rue, I am afraid he will be rent by a passing Higgs boson. At the end of every session, the same chant. Keep coming back, it works. Everything is, of course, nameless, and form an illusion, and language slips on a foundation of rose petals. But I already said that. I can't wait until the next meeting so I can say it again.
Wow. I'm not sure I have anything that I want to read after here. I'll read another one from the early 1980s. My first wife died in 1982, and the winter of 1982-83 was just horrible. If any, it looks like there are some people in there that were alive, like I was back then. It started snowing on Thanksgiving, and it didn't let up until March, and we had day after day after day of below freezing weather. And I had a willow tree growing out in my backyard, and I noticed that the winter was so harsh that it broke the willow. And so I wrote, "The year the winter broke willows." This winter's ice and wind broke willows. Oaks will be broken every year. Rigid and massive like Lear in the storm, an oak will break. But breaking willows, now that's a thing. If I did not have numbers, it would be a way to mark the year the winter broke willows. And it would be a cardinal year, one that comes to divide before and after. In a good long time, all events would be altered, each to carry the impress of a single year. The Chinook today eats snow. Below the sod, below this patch of prairie bruised by thaw, the green seeps up. And all along the Platte, along the braided flat water, broken willows grieve in the sand. They ache in the press of wind like widows, too root stiff to dance, waiting to be healed.
The history of grief, the joy of disintegration. I don't know, there's metamorphosis has always been kind of a fascination for people, and amphibians, are one example of animals that metamorphose. And the Buddhists and have a tendency to, haiku is often kind of involves frogs a lot of times. I mentioned salamanders in here because I think it's a cooler word than frogs. But, so anyway, you kind of get what else. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Yeah. The history of grief, the joy of disintegration. What makes it so? He asked, catching the last fringe of the salamander's echo. Kerplunk, it said, all air and fluid, slipping into evening as darkness crept from crevices and spread across the heights. You may have noticed that haiku exists as a tension between the ephemeral and the permanent. Permanence often conceived as perpetually recurrent. Expectations of the future haunt the present. Little here will last, as you no doubt know, locked and loaded, blown sand biting your ankles. How difficult it is bearing the balance for even a moment of what persists and what does not. Though we know little of the world, we become expert at the systems we use to beguile ourselves. This ashram is built on quivering sticks in the sea's perplexity, hoping for another life, shaking the slender thread. Let me explain. The figurative exists as a phantom world. Longing, only longing makes this one so. An ecstatic arrangement of breath and water. Obsolescence makes it move.
I truly don't need drugs anymore now that I've Ernie's poetry in my life. I wish I'd met you when I was 20, dude. Cut that from the tape. Steve requested one from my book, which I have one copy of. I'll sell you for $8. And Paul, I got one for you, a signed copy. Thanks for coming. Finally, he says. Resentment, you know? So, forgive me, it's another mirror liquor. It's kind of my favorite genre. It seems like with the title, it's not about me, but it's about me. And it's not. Love letter to James Tate. My nails are ragged. Oh, James, by the way, did you like my new doggerel? It's a replica of one you wrote in some book or other. I wish I had a foot-long carrot right now. Do you like marijuana? I mean, not just at night, but anytime. There are people like that, you know. They're like people who like mimosas, drink them any time of the day. Wastrels, that's what my father calls them. Me, I'm addicted to addiction. I like ping pong and ice cream, bruises, the smell of simmering soup, the crunch of potato chips. I like Manhattans and bowling, too. What I hate most is being the last one to speak under any context. Do I sound like a neurotic? Are we still dying? I once made a pass at a cheerleader. Did I ever tell you that? She said, you can't kiss worse shit, and that's not going to change. Sounds kind of silly now when I tell you, but she was a clown. Do you know that I've never believed in God? It sounds so big and dumb, so vague up there in the indifferent sky, not all knowing. They should have called him something like Pudwhacker. But I guess that's religion. What is it they always say? You getting nervous yet, hun? I am. When I was 7, I sat on the edge of her bed and let my cousin touch me all over. I love to remember it, but I still can't think of her in a healthy way. I'm silly. It'd be a waste to let it ruin our relationship. Who do you think is more fixated on this memory, me or her? It'd be okay with me if it were just her. Darling, can we start soon? I really hate to say it, but I need it in the worst way. I apologize, Cliff. I apologize.
No. That apology is withdrawn. I love that. I want to say here what an honor it is for me to be with these two poets. I heard Love Letter to James Tate first time a couple of weeks ago, and I did ask Todd if he would read it today, so thank you, I appreciate that. And then I went home, and I thought, if I was going to write a love letter to a man, who would I write it to? Johnny Cash. And so after reading two from the early 80s, I'm going to read one that I've written here within the last 30 days. It was after I heard Love Letter to James Tate. It's based on a true story. If you've not been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, please go. it's worth your time. Parked in front of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is the Johnny Cash tour bus. And I was there a couple of years ago, and I got on that bus, and I was on that bus all by myself about twilight one afternoon, so I wrote this poem about my experience on that bus. It's called The Voice. The Johnny Cash tour bus is parked in the plaza in front of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. My wife and daughters having little interest in a bus, I boarded alone. Johnny, June, and young John Carter Cash had separate compartments. June's is done up in baby blue velour, standing there where she lived that thrumming road life. I felt her heart ache, almost heard that little irresistible growl of hers, darling, come on and give me understanding. I went to the way back where the man in black slept. The Highwayman rode this rig in '91. Think of that. Willie, Chris, Waylon, and John passing the time of day on this long, stately black transport, branded House of Cash, Hendersonville, Tennessee. Ghost riders indeed. I walked slowly back to John's quarters, done up in dark wood and black leather. The table is built of wood, salvaged near Cash's birthplace from a Civil War era house that once served as headquarters for Ulysses S. Grant. A Southern man would enjoy owning a thing possessed even for a brief borrowed time by General Grant. I leaned forward and put both hands flat on that cool expanse of old wood. I closed my eyes. I saw that jet black hair piled high above the chiseled face, etched with the pain of unending loss after loss after loss. I saw that curled lip and the way he hauled that guitar by the neck, flinging it out in front of him as if he needed to keep it under control. He's afraid he'd get away from him if he didn't keep it in sight. And I started hearing things. I took a shot of cocaine and away I run. I keep the ends out for the tie that binds. I tell you, life ain't easy for a boy named Sue. Then I felt on my shoulder the hand of wiry strength, these hands of a guitar man. Then the voice grew bold. It was there. It was right in my ear. Hello.
You do a pretty good imitation.
Oh,
Uh, This doesn't need the explanation, I don't think. Summer histories. After a series of victories or a string of lost causes and slow-moving days, one thing is certain: there's never a stalemate. Even orbits degrade. Nor is anything buried but to come out again, more fundamental. A flurry of recalcitrant dust, a whisper of longing. It was wonderful heading south out of Baltimore, scattered poverty and wealth on a long, sweet morning. Lordy, lordy, after all those years, you forget the bars and the brothels, you forget the business and the brawls, the faces, the buildings and the name. But you remember a two-lane highway and the elemental light. You remember the chill across your shoulders as you turned to leave, as you stepped across into another world. You lie down to sleep and you drift away. Never, never in a million years will you come across a day that just played out. Like some old Arapaho who swings up on his pony, your feet won't touch that ground again. Why not find some kindly old woman, move in and grow old? You're never younger than your last breath. It's cool in her house, and her garden is filled with watery light.
yeah. Tough acts to follow. What if I just quit? Short one here, I don't think it needs much like yours, not much, we kind of riff off each other, that was our plan, so this maybe is a natural follow-up. We used to visit my in-laws' place, it was a real sanctuary for us, so this is set in a faraway town. I don't know, may not make much sense otherwise, but 24 lines toward an amends. She is green and easy, she sings in her chains, she is reeling as a child reels, asking me again to count her ribs as a precursor to something. And I write it all down, and everyone takes me seriously at AA, where we talk and play honesty games. She soars through the roof in her Superman pose, but alas, cannot stop our unraveling. If her parents were still alive, smoking their Winstons and treating us to 12 kinds of ice cream, I would thank them for so many things, but especially for having taught her to fish. Her father could coax a kite into the air like a magician. The limp string of a windless afternoon gone suddenly taut. A blue diamond snapping over the treetops, everybody laughing. Her mother was always the last to bed, and we often sat and drank to the Weather Channel while the rest of the house slept. Had halting discourses on subjects I cannot remember. When at last I laid my body down beside her daughter and lo, began to descry the hangover to come, the child's hand kissed my chest like a tongue of flame.
I'll do another one from Japan. Something about what you just read reminded me of this. You guys can make the connections. It's called The View of the Sunset from Crybaby's Egg. Crybaby's Egg is a little snack shop. It's the name of the little restaurant, Crybaby's Egg. And I was sitting in there as the sun went down, and I watched darkness come into this street in Tokyo. The view of the sunset from Crybaby's Egg means you watch the lights go on in an apartment house garage across the street. No strings, Japanese pop with a refrain that sounds like Osaka, baby. Music for a golden sinking into gray, and buses, fat cocoons of light, take parts that in other scenes are reserved for clouds. The gazing lady behind the counter moves like a June bug at sundown, preparing boxed dinners to be wheeled off by a boy on a bike into the charcoal-washed street. The school kids at Wayno rushed at you, a startled flock, practicing English, shouting, "Hello, hello, how old are you?" They touched your arms, hands, legs, as if you were bronze, an object of prayer, luck, or a wish. They brushed your metal into a sunset glow, fade to gray, fading, "Hello, hello."
Oh.
We all feel that way.
If poetry were a crib, would you want your baby sleeping in it? You know how in the Hindus, they kind of imagine the world as Vishnu sleeps and Brahma rises out of his navel and the world comes into being, and then if he wakes, then it disappears. That's kind of. If poetry were a crib, would you want your baby sleeping in it? Maybe if he and I were settled under an old oak by a road down which sailors were filing home, oars over their shoulders, pools of sea salt in their eyes, or if the whiskey-colored water had a ring to it remembered from better times, and poems were signals like crickets and stars send out at night. If we could rise like bat flight from this mineral intensity, this stone sea, We can name the world's own true hallucination many things. That line of trees, for instance. That, since they are over there and determinate. Line, since they stand straight, one beyond another, on and on. Of, because they are comprised, you see. Tree, for they cast a shadow, which is what is not. Define and sweeten wind, eat sunlight, burst forth green this time of year. Year, for after all we passed this way before. Even the gods sleep, wrapped in darkness beyond imagining, and dream all the colors of the cosmos. Sleep where you will, perhaps forever lost, but sleep. There one finds a glimpse of how the world will be on waking, ripening on a far still crest toward morning, coming handsomely about up near the edge. And if the God who dreams you wakes before you, well, so be it. There are many tumbling in the night.
It takes me deep. It takes me too deep, man. It's hard to rise up from that water. It's quite a change of tone. Mine will be, but it springs. I think it springs from maybe a similar well. The idea of myth, archetype, and its profound light. This is a much more recent myth, though. It's a Star Trek based. Steve and I are huge fans of Star Trek, so I've got two of those. I could do three, but I'll spare you. This one's like 3 days old, or 4 maybe 12, I don't know. It's hard to know how to read it, but we'll try. The Wrath of Todd. After love doesn't ignite at first sight. Have you ever had that inkling? It's like you're piloting a crippled ship through an immense pastel lightning-threaded space cloud at the fringe of known space while a homicidal superhuman stalks you like Ahab. Or like you've beamed down to investigate a distress beacon only to find yourself on a ghost planet grappling with a megalomaniacal goon while dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun throbs in your face. That's how I feel, baby. That's how it feels. But it only makes me need you more. Like Spock needs logic. Like Chekhov needs a nuclear vessel, baby. Like Uhura needs a promotion. Like Scotty needs more power or she's going to blow, baby. It makes me illogical. I need you like Captain Kirk needs to lead every away team into certain death. And, well, that's not how I meant that, but I'm talking all decks venting oxygen. I'm talking warp coils losing their shit and everybody careening in side to side synchronous despair. Because it's your womanly ways waking me from a cryogenic snooze of centuries. And I want you like Khan wants revenge. Like an expendable crewman wants to live. Like a telepathic snail wants to curl inside a warm ear. Don't get me wrong, I won't stare you down from my mall bangs like a post-apocalyptic aerobics instructor. I need you to know what exactly I mean when I tell you in a voice full of theatrical pauses. I am your captain, baby. And these are the voyages of the starship Kiss Me, You Fool. Going where no lovers have gone before. I am pensive in my plastic chair, bluffing omnipotent villains into lowering their shields for the split second I need to beam you back to my side. You are the Genesis device and the first mate. You are the prime directive, baby. You are the blood fever, a dream that became a reality and spread throughout the stars.
I brought some copies of this. This is a project I did with my sister, who is a painter in Des Moines. It includes reproductions of some of her work and then my poetry. And there's anybody who wants one can have it and take it with you. And what I can't read anything after The Wrath of Todd except a poem called Mowing and the Kobayashi Maru scenario. If you don't know what the Kobayashi Maru scenario is, ask your neighbor. Certain constants apply no matter the alternate Star Trek reality. Kirk, for instance, telegraphs his punches. Have you noticed? My mind will not be still when I mow the lawn. Typically, I run through the list of people in my life who deserve to have awful things happen to them. Otherwise, I concoct alternate reality Star Trek plot lines. For instance, Spock, the cool calculator, not Kirk, the fiery hot reactor, cheats on the Kobayashi Maru scenario at Starfleet Academy. When Kirk confronts Spock, he makes to give the Vulcan a good one across the lips. Unflinching, Spock reaches out and pinches Kirk's shoulder. Kirk collapses to the deck, close up on Spock's face, and then the thing with the eyebrow.
Here's what I think of contemporary. Issues inherent in cable TV. Paying for basic cable isn't exactly like paying for head lice and bed bugs, who are creatures after all and have mothers, faces, and cute little feet. Though in all fairness, so are the beaming do-gooders who read the news and raise suspicions. There are problems, my friends, in the pixelated world. Genocidal mania, cluttered closets, geriatric incontinence, penile flaccidity, adolescence, which make for gripping narratives and require your attention and sympathy. Of course, we've heard it all before. Consider Homer, for instance, who, while lacking corporate sponsorship, beheld the cosmos and saw the gods cavort. Those elemental quantum monkeys held the world together like so much fungal mycelium. The beige fuzz of being was transformed by dissolute flesh and spidery ink into rocks, greenery, and watery spaces, until emptiness, that most impossible of commodities, stretched to a point and disappeared, like Zeus and Aphrodite, muscles, nipples, spit curdles, and all.
That's glorious, man. I hope someday when I'm on my final bed, you'll be there just reading infinite numbers of your work to me, you know?
Oh, Todd.
It's a full-on bromance, baby. All right, we're proceeding. I got more pop culture, man. Here's my rebuke. It's another Star Trek poem. Sorry, I'm not going to only do that, but Steve's a fan, dude. We got to speak to one another in a language only Klingons know. So this is called Reply of the Red Shirt, and if you know your lore, the red shirts are like the security guys, and you know the stars never croak, right? It's just the expendable ones. So this is speaking up for them. Sometimes we all feel like a red shirt, am I right? Answer this, female life forms. A pectorally augmented ubermensch with frosted bangs and a growl like a cloud of Cuban cigar smoke sidles up to you on the bridge. But we all know by the next star date you are doing the cosmic lambada well enough to make a Klingon blush. Because love truly does age like Star Trek. The early missions brawling through papier-mâché sound stages like a love-drunk lizard man. Captain Kirk zipping up his boots in some Star Queen's quarters after punking another tin pot pretender. Nameless you shuffling gray hallways to plastic chairs for another plate full of gruel. maybe some 3D chess with your annoyingly rational buddy. Because it takes a chest full of dilithium crystals to power your heart past the black holes of the universe of love. Notice, the red shirt kisses who? No one. We, anonymous cannon fodder, we take the butt end of the away party's phalanx and are driven mad by robot gypsies, telepathic rock creatures, the green-eyed radiance of a girl in composition class who seems way too smart to tango with a black-booted clod like Todd. It isn't logical, but it is often true. Galloping around the cosmos is a game for the young, so you must know her heart is giving everything she's got to overtake your warp speed self-absorption, which no tractor beam can grasp unless you realize the sentient slime molds and time pirates, and that last lover of hers, the space hippie with the blue lute you could never learn to play, are not the obstacles to interstellar peace. The only thing stopping you from being fully alive is your fear throbbing like a pulsar. So hail her and say, let us boldly go, baby. Set your phasers on stun. That caveman with the foam club and your own searing self-doubt aren't worth a tribble. Beam up and engage engines. Finally ask her out to explore strange new worlds. And see what happens when the credits celestial zither stops its wail and the TV clicks off to have her sitting there, some star going nova inside you.
And continuing with the pop culture, forgive me, Ernie. But actually, I want to find the guy who inspired this is in the room. My movie buddy and neighbor, Chuck Martins, founder of the Forgotten Omaha Facebook page. If any of you remember that, he's you know, we got 150,000 members of that Facebook page. So Chuck shares my passion for the movies. And actually, you don't know this, Chuck, but I was thinking about you when I wrote this. It's called Why the Movies Are Better Than Real Life. More pop culture. Because the real Moses actually looks kind of like Billy the Kid and sometimes dresses to fit the part. Because Jesus has jet black eyes and olive skin and never uses a beard trimmer. Because Cleopatra is stunningly beautiful and African and undefeated. Because the Frankenstein monster drinks chai at Starbucks and sets up in the corner with his laptop and no one notices. Because the Wicked Witch is under contract to guess and has eyes and legs that won't quit. Not only never did Dorothy give her sister that wailing meltdown, but the green one keeps showing up in Star Trek, in Jim Kirk's bedroom.
I suppose this was pop culture at one time. I was actually kind of thinking about Arthur Rimbaud when I wrote this, but who I suppose I sort of admired at some point or other. But my God, he was such a horrible little bastard. You know, that the world's worst house guest. And I don't know if you know his story, but he wrote from the time he was like about 15 to maybe like 15 till he was about 20 or so, 25, something. And then he thought, this is kind of stupid, and took off. He got a job with a trading company, and he was in Africa for a long time. For a while, he had an Abyssinian mistress. He ran guns and stuff like that. I don't say an Abyssinian mistress because I think Senegalese is a cooler word. But, so yeah. And I mean, this is absolutely not, well, kind of. It's sort of similar, but it has absolutely nothing to do with Arthur Rimbaud. And some people think it's kind of sexist, but it isn't really. What it is a dramatic monologue, actually, sort of. Keeping to one's elements. And it also has an epigraph, which I made up myself. Keeping to one's elements. It may seem a dark place filled with pain and howling, but it is paradise, my friend. On an off day, to be sure, but paradise nonetheless. My Senegalese mistress knows these times are ill. Tonight, her visions fall from the eaves like rain. Far wiser than I, she casts neck bones on the bathroom tiles. I hear them clicking, hear her moaning in the night. I will not sleep. She says she sees the lights the spirits leave in their wakes as they go passing. This moon, thin moon, shaken branches of the shaken tree, auguries, presages. It's getting late. I fear that she will come to me. Dawn entangled in a dirty haze, chicken guts spread on the kitchen table, blood to her elbows smeared between her breasts. I will not eat. I bought this woman from a withered tribesman for a crock of whiskey and a Browning rifle. But she's cost far more. I've grown to love her, and she's much too real. My innocence is shattered, yet her musky tropic presence is all I have to hold me on this winter shore, as her ancient summer spirits come to be undone. It may be well I cannot see their little lights extinguished one by one.
Take me there, baby. Leave me there. Drop me off with the Abyssinian maid. All right, pals. There it is. Our time approaches. I think you get one more. We each get two. Is that right?
Sure.
Way to kill the buzz, huh? Way to kill the buzz. All right, I'll do a short one, and then I'll do a long one. This one also has an epigraph by Larry Levis. Ernst is bummed. He's like, one more? I can do this all day. We need a second hour? We don't care if you're gone. We'll do this forever. Thanks for coming, everybody. This is called Among the Octogenarians. An octogenarian is someone in their 80s, if you don't know, which I know you do know. You're the poetry reading. You're literate people. There's one allusion that you may or may not get in the, I don't know, man, it was the late 90s maybe? The Learjet containing the golfer Payne Stewart and his posse, his entourage, lost cabin pressure, and they all asphyxiated, but the jet was on autopilot, and so it flew for thousands of miles with these dead passengers. So I've always been really sort of enthralled by that, appalled and enthralled. So I don't even know why I bring it up in a poem that has nothing to do about that, but that's kind of how I roll. It's probably because of all the LSD. So it also has an epigraph from Larry Levis from his poem Sleeping Lioness. Anything is enough if you know how poor you are. Spring yawns a few weeks off, sticks from the covers one cold foot. Beneath ice dams, an old couple sits talking about the renal clinic, where no one, I think, is looking at casket catalogs. Maybe the whole hospital is dancing naked. Maybe the old lovers dress without wondering how a body is dolled up for its unbirthday, or how the Learjet with those quiet golfers kept flying until the fuel ran out, while the dead dreamed of fairways. A purple daylily is splaying in a photo on my phone. I want to splay and be purple, and want only light, the way a whittled cane cannot remember the tree. The phone vibrates or not and means nothing. I want to race forward and approach myself at age 82 and press a daylily into his hand so he can see. He will stand naked in a polished hallway, suddenly awake among the many sleepers. I want to be parallel, the timeline of my life never touching the dirt.
When my oldest daughter, was about 3, she was riding in the car seat, and we were doing some errands, and there was a daytime moon in the sky. And she kind of leaned her head like this and looked out the window and said, "Is the moon God, and does she have hair?" My daughter's a poet. And so I've written, "Is the moon God, and does she have hair?" For my daughter, Casey. Is the moon God, and does she have hair? You asked me that when you were 3 years old, riding in your booster seat in our old Camry, the car where sometime later you would take tiny bites out of the upholstery on the door panel. Midday, and the moon was pasted on the bright, broad sky, a sliver of white ice visible in the space your eyes would take in when you rolled your head to the right and spoke to me in that tiny, precise voice of yours as if you were just whispering a question to yourself. Is the moon God, and does she have hair? This riveted my father's heart. Oh, each daughter, no doubt, drives poetry into her father's heart. But this was you there that day, moving just outside the circle of my, what, fatherness? It is fatherness, knowing there will be things to stalk a child's soul. Fatherness, startled to learn the child, too, knows in ways that lead to overwhelming questions. Is the moon God? And does she have hair? Fatherness, a long old time in the warm house. Your chubby, upreaching arms, your little arching tiptoe bounce, a solemn set of your mouth below eyes, wise with everything you knew. By the violet flowers frowsing in the breeze near the walk, you crouched, grasping your knees, your still fixed gaze on the bloom. No question. Something wise in you said, here is a thing. Give it regard.
So is this the last time around?
I think so. How much more can they take, man?
I was kind of thinking about my old Uncle Fritz when I wrote this, I think, but who was kind of a reticent old guy. He was kind of a crabby old bastard, actually, but he always kind of liked me, so I liked him. And he never had, I think he liked me kind of because he didn't have any kids, actually. And but then, lo and behold, when I was about 10 years old, he got married, and in about 5 years had about a half a dozen kids. So. But this is called Thanksgiving morning. Years later, in the safety of the kitchen, watching dear old Clara and those homely, rather silly children trying again to cook a turkey, an elusive, comforting truth would occur to him with a clarity that stung his eyes, that impossible as it might seem under the right circumstances, in his case busted and straight from hell, one can and usually will grow to love someone, and nearly anyone will do. This in spite of the fact, or perhaps because of it, that Clara, quotidian as oatmeal, if he had the temerity to share this thought, would almost certainly disagree. Consider, too, that glamour, even among the aristocracy, originally meant magic. And here in the spell of sunlight and aromas of Clara and the kids, This warmth of recognition had little to do with virtue, nothing to do with logic, and nearly everything to do with his almost mystical propensity for showing up season after season, sometimes in awfully disagreeable weather.
An honor to be at your right hand. The right hand of the Father, baby. And you're at the right hand of the Todd, Father.
That's an honor.
Everything is as it should be. All right, well, this speaks for itself all too clearly. Renewing the vows. My marriage is getting big and sex-addled. She swishes past me naked from the belly down, or closes herself into herself, television the only noise. We drink margaritas too often, eat dinner in separate rooms, make amniotic love in the pool, read Lorca aloud in bed at night, sulk and stare into dreams we can never remember. She yells at me to turn down astral weeks. I beg her to call her sister. She drops shoes everywhere and I pick them up. We put on pounds. We laugh at a comedian's bleak truths. We are inviolate, spinning through St. Cecilia at noon, just us and the two wiry widows in that cold heaven. She slams the bedroom door. I stalk outside. She kisses my cheek. We drink beer at a bar, conspiring to drive our crone of a neighbor insane. She berates me for neglecting her plants. I belittle her in front of a dozen friends. She tells me this is what I always do. I tell her she infantilizes me, buys me underwear that is entirely too cute. We watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy compulsively and without joy. She orders endless textiles from catalogs. We sway to reggae all through June. She hides from her family, from mine, from everyone. I insult her for refusing to vote. She insults me for believing it matters. We watch seahorses and dragons coalesce in clouds. She used to believe in cloud gazing. Our feet creak every morning. Our throats congeal every night. Gray hairs begin to frame that doll baby face. My back no longer lets me take it for granted. Our mortgage is nearly paid. The lawn grows thick and embarrassed. No one visits. We discuss the merits of quinoa, the verities of booze, the infamy of Republicans. We drive to Hannibal, photograph that tired river town, smell the musk of Clemens on every stone. She reads. I fret about my teaching, and she says, I can't help you. She tends patients all day while I walk the dog, graze Facebook, eat organics. We shout, we chortle, we laze, we grunt. I ignore her calls from work. We drive to Zesto twice in one day, sugar sticky on our lips. She refuses to eat Vietnamese. I refuse to stop smoking. The house leaks. The hospital overbills us. We assume old friends will never die. We used to cry together, but it's been moons. Our bikes rust in the garage. We put on the Dead and boogie past midnight. She gets buzzed and remembers her parents, gone now 10 years. We repeat our marriage vows, stare at the pictures of young strangers in the big album. She rubs calamine lotion on me. I massage her shoulders. She sings a song about her boobs. I make the bed. She offers me mushrooms. I offer her bread. We fly to Kauai and Craig T. Nelson sits 2 tables away and we say nothing. We kayak down a river, unable to build a rhythm. She endures my snoring. I endure her negativity. We vow to stop drinking for a week. We drink. I caress her face. She kisses me again and again and again. We pick cherry tomatoes. She sews my shirt. I make her an appointment. She tells me my mom is acting funny. She wants to know where I put her iPad. I praise her toes. She tells me to shave. I put her green hat on a statue of Poseidon. She asks me why I never write poems about her. I tell her every poem is about her.
Well, the Todd father set the topic, marriage. My marriage, my second marriage, recently ended in divorce. And I've been in some dark places, darkest places I've ever been. So this is one of my healing poems. I'm working on healing. This is recent. It's called I Go to Watch the Blood Dry. Of the rising and cooling and sighing, giving way of water, and how and when it freezes and thaws and how it goes its way, I learned because I spent hours alone outside in woods near streams and rivers that were play perfect. I went out there to learn that a certain consistency of mud clots on and along your soles and interferes with your stride. That certain insects make excellent use of creek water's surface tension. That years and years ago, countless little jars made of blue and green and pink glass were either lost, stolen, or tossed, their jagged shards collecting among pebbles in the sand along unnamed streams. That some green things push up through the snow, nosing into the warm season's earliest light, while other growing things stay somber brown, sometimes into June and beyond. That there is something very like personhood in stones. That abandoned dwelling places have chilly spaces and are unutterably sad. I go out there now to learn how I make this bleeding stop, to watch the blood dry. I go to see it age from ripened, sodden scarlet to withered, brittle maroon as that latte moon overhead seals up the gashes. This I know. Natural things heal. Once, I put on Brownsville Girl as the soundtrack for my chores. She said, "You sure know how to wreck a Saturday morning."